Democrats are now realizing they did permanent damage to their relationship with the Muslim American community. Liberals have been desperately trying to convince Muslim Americans that Democrats teaming with Republicans in order to slaughter tens of thousands of Palestinians, it's not that big of a deal. Come on, man, let it go. We got to save our democracy. You know, the democracy that enabled the genocide in the first place? And this pitch is working just as well as you expected it to, where we have Muslim American leaders across this country that's telling Biden and Democrats to fuck off. Liberals are trying to convince these Muslim voters that Biden is pushing Israel behind the scenes and that him halting weapon shipments to Israel after their Rafah invasion is somehow supposed to win them over after he already killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. Reminder, the only reason Biden is halting weapon shipments to Israel is because Biden already sent them all the weapons that they need in order to finish their invasion of Rafah. Liberals really believe these Muslim Americans are stupid. What's devastating for Democrats is that Genocide Joe has been so reprehensible in his handling of this genocide that many Muslim Americans said, even if he did a 180 on his policies, they still couldn't support him. What are Democrats doing in order to avert this coming electoral disaster after they supported a genocide? And Democrats are using Hillary Clinton in order to smear people who are protesting against the genocide of Israel. Good luck with that strategy, champ. You also have Biden giving speeches that essentially smears anyone who criticizes Israel as an anti-Semite. So as Biden is trying to win the votes of Muslim Americans, he's also calling them anti-Semites for criticizing his genocide.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism.
They don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East, or frankly about history in many areas of the world, including in our own country.
What a bold strategy. Let's see how it works out for them. What's poppin', my friends? As you guys predict, it's not working well for Democrats. Liberals and Democrats think that they can put on these sham trials against Trump, and that will somehow get people to be okay with supporting someone who's committing genocide. And now Democrats are fucking around and finding out. Donald Trump believes Joe Biden in 5 key battleground states. Now, Biden, especially if you're an Arab American, if you're a Black American, if you're a worker in general, there is no reason to vote for Biden. So I made this list before October 7th. You guys realize this? This is my viral tweet. Look at the date here. This date, I sent this September 11th. I don't think that was on purpose. September 11th of last year. And I put together this extensive list on reasons why no one should vote for Joe Biden. And that's before he funded a genocide in Gaza, my friends. So we see Bernie Sanders, we see the progressive left still trying to support Joe Biden. And Democrats, anyone who support the Democrats and Joe Biden, especially after this record, pre-genocide, is the enemy of liberation movements, is the enemy of the working class. I said it many times before, if you're Black and you vote for Joe Biden Democrats, you will never admit it, but you have very little self-respect. If you're an Arab American and you vote for Democrats, you have very little self-respect. Now, you guys see it's just a few things on this list, and remember, I put this out before the genocide. You got Joe Biden, who was the largest eco-terrorist in human history, the Nord Stream pipeline bomber, approved of the Willow Project, broke the rail strike, gave federal contracts to union busters, sent COVID-19 relief money to the police, funded ICE to record levels. You guys know that Joe Biden funded ICE $6 billion more than Donald Trump, right? And you still have people that say Biden has an open border, and they never define what that means. People, especially a lot of people in white America, can't cope with the fact that there's no neoliberal police state solution to the immigration crisis that was started because of the sanctions regime of the United States. The only way you stop this if you're in the sanction regime and we completely change the way we interact with our neighbors, where we promote prosperity instead of destroying their country. But that's too complex of an analysis for some people. So they just say, oh, we got a wide open border. How many more billions of dollars do you guys want to fund to the border and DHS that comes from our community before you guys acknowledge that this shit is not working? People say, oh my God, the migrants are siphoning our resources. No, DHS and the police state is. And they still fail. Illegally pressuring social media companies to crack down on free speech, fighting proxy war with Russia by sending weapons to Nazis in Ukraine, stealing billions from Afghanistan, starving their people, absolutely unhinged China policy. And bro, isn't that an understatement now we look at it? Sent nuclear submarines to Australia, sent weapons to Taiwan, which ties to the China policy. Hunter Biden paid to play corruption, hiring Neera Tanden as the White House domestic policy advisor, hiring Anthony Blinken, I warned you guys, hiring Lloyd Austin. And look at this. Full-fledged support to the genocidal state of Israel. You see who, before the Free Palestine grift became super popular, you guys see who was calling this out before October 7th, before the genocide in Gaza? I warned people. People were like, why did Nick care so much about Israel Palestine? Why is that the litmus test? Because I said Israel was a genocidal state even before or post Gaza, because I explained that 2022 was the most deadly year for Palestinians in the West Bank in history. I covered how you had Israel raiding mosques and mass slaughtering people in Gaza even before October 7th. So don't let anyone convince you that Hamas started this. This started on October 7th. Then I add some more. They also stole Iranian and Syrian oil. They escalated the Cuban embargo, where Cuban officials even said that Biden has a harsher Cuba policy than any president ever, including Trump, actively trying to kill Julian Assange. In fact, you had Australia that came out and begged Biden to not prosecute Julian Assange because he's an Australian journalist. And Biden was like, nah. Bomb Somalia, cut SNAP benefits, hired the notorious war criminal Elliot Abrams, and hired Victoria Nuland, who retired as Deputy Secretary of State. And with a record this shining, one of the worst administrations in modern human history, and I know how bad all the other ones been. The strongest pushback to my statement is people bring up George W. Bush Jr., but I'll be like, well, Joe Biden was a senator and he supported all George W. Bush Jr. shit anyway. But I don't fight people on that. But I think Biden is the worst, and I think so lowly of every president in my lifetime. So let's watch this video real quick and we move on.
Look, these Sun Belt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is
absolute disaster. Liberals was in denial for so long. Joe Scarborough forever like, oh my God, people underestimating Biden. Oh boy, this is going bad for you guys.
In Arizona for Donald Trump, he's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sun Belt battlegrounds.
When you're looking into the numbers, why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is
how can you fuck up so bad? and we can step outside of people in the know online, right? Because
one of the big
black
reasons.
radicals are not falling for Trump derangement syndrome. But guys, anecdotally, the black community generally hates Trump. And I'm talking about like the normies. Obviously, there's the right-wing grifters. God, these right-wing conservatives, they're the minority of the minority. Because I explain all the time that half of black people don't vote. Half of black people aren't liberal conservatives. So black conservatives are extremely rare, actually, despite what a lot of people think. Well, I wouldn't say black conservatives. I'll say black Republicans. But when I talk to my normie friends, like my dad had Trump derangement syndrome, everyone hates Trump. Do you guys know how much you got to be fucking up for this to happen? Well, now you guys are losing black and brown people in the era of Trump, where you guys are supposed to ride that Trump derangement syndrome wave to political dominance. Not only is that happening, they're becoming more politically irrelevant than ever, to the point where the mainstream media have to acknowledge that Biden is getting crushed. You have young people that favoring Trump over Biden, because who will vote for Biden, a complete genocidal maniac who obviously don't care about the will of his party? You have the majority of Jewish Democrats, majority of Americans that's calling for ending Israel, the support for Israel during their campaign in Gaza. Biden said he doesn't care. Biden cared more about funding never-ending conflicts, sending weapons to Taiwan, funding Nazis in Ukraine, bombing Somalia, illegally occupying Niger, illegally occupying Iraq and Syria, getting troops killed for no reason. So this incompetence, and what we're seeing is historic, to the point where even CNN and everyone had to acknowledge, like, bro, are y'all trying to get Trump elected with these moves that you guys are making? So let's listen to this, because this is blowing the mind of the liberals right now.
Here's my take.
Honestly blew my mind when I first saw it.
When President Biden made clear he was going to run for re-election, I had a sense of what his election strategy was and thought it was an intelligent path to victory. After the chaos of COVID and Trump, Joe Biden would stand for normalcy and a rising tide of good economic news.
Why would anyone believe that? Why would anyone believe that? That was the messaging coming from Biden, saying he's going to push for normalcy. How is the person who advocates for every single war, who has unhinged Middle East policies, how is that going to lead to normalcy? How is unhinged neoliberalism, unchecked capitalism going to lead to normalcy? Only liberal-minded institutionalists will believe that. But let me play this, because I want to get through these segments before our guests get here.
Republicans, with significant chunks of the party wishing that someone like Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis would be their nominee. Meanwhile, Trump would unite and motivate Democrats, allowing President Biden to focus on the votes of independents and swing states who threw the Electoral College to Trump in 2016 and to Biden in 2020. I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would.
This is what everyone will have to admit in the liberal media here very soon. This is not playing out how we thought it would. They thought that if they put Trump on trial, these political trials, that people would ignore the crimes of the Biden administration. Somehow that young people and them will come back home. So I want to play this L, because all these people going to be taking these L's by advocating for this unhinged liberal strategy, which is designed to give the right-wing, conservative wing of the establishment power. Because remember, it's very important for them to play ping pong with each other. Republicans take charge, Democrats take charge. And I'm going to show you guys that Trump plans to completely tank the United States economy with his unhinged trade wars. So Trump is going to take charge. He's going to fund the Ukraine war. He's going to create a trade war that's going to destroy the dollar. And then people are going to hate Trump, and they're going to go back to a Democrat again. This is the scheme of the two-party duopoly. But so let me play the part where he admits his L again, and I'll let it continue.
In swing states who threw the Electoral College to Trump in 2016 and to Biden in 2020. I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country. The economy has been in a robust recovery for more than 2 years now, with
Bullshit. You guys see the state media here? Their job is to campaign for Joe Biden and the Democrats because the Democrats are too bad to do so themselves. So you guys see the fiction, despite CNN and all the liberal wing of the corporate media pushing this lie that the economy is great, Americans are not buying it. You guys are failing in your propaganda. You guys are not able to convince people that Biden economy is good for them. So listen to this again. You're going to see how the corporate media have been campaigning for Biden, and despite that, they still can't help him. Which is actually a terrible reflection on you, because Americans distrust the corporate media so much that you guys can tell them the economy is good over and over and over again, and they still won't believe you.
or from support not overestimated. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country. The economy has been in a robust recovery for more than 2 years now, with unemployment hitting a 54-year low in 2023 and increasing only slightly since then. But Biden is getting little credit for it. The shift here is stark. On the question of who voters trust more to deal with the economy, Trump has a 22-point lead over Biden, according to an NBC poll from January. This marks a 15-point bump for Trump compared to the same poll in 2020. Perhaps this is because inflation is a far more pervasive problem than unemployment, affecting all.
No shit, dumbass. Who been telling them this from day one in all our propaganda reports? They say, oh my God, look at all this great economic indicators. And then in the same segment, they would say, well, most Americans feel like they are struggling to survive because of inflation. I feel like the part where Americans say they are struggling because of inflation is way more significant than your bullshit unemployment stats, sir. The only people who believe that are these institutionalists, these capitalists. They put the unemployment rate as so important, but it doesn't matter what the unemployment rate is if wages does not match living conditions so people can thrive. Let's continue.
Inflation is a far more pervasive problem than unemployment, affecting all Americans every day. Perhaps it's because people's views on the economy now are largely derived from their broader attitudes towards the candidates. But whatever the reasons, it's a stunning reversal in the midst of a relentless stream of good economic news.
Just making that up.
On cultural issues, Biden and Democrats benefit from the opposition to the Republican Party's position on abortion.
Delusional. As Biden funds a genocide where Palestinian women are being forced to have C-sections without anesthesia because of what the Democrats is doing. But you guys want me to vote for Democrats because of abortion rights? As Palestinian women are forced to have C-sections without anesthesia, as 70% of the victims in the genocide have been women and children, you want me to vote for Biden for a feminist cause? Get the fuck out of here! You're not a feminist if you vote for Biden.
But on the other great cultural issue, immigration, Biden is 35 points behind Trump as to who would handle it better. And I do wonder whether abortion will be as large an issue in a presidential race, given that reversing Roe v. Wade threw the issue to state governments and legislatures and not the federal government. Perhaps the most worrying new trend for the Democrats is that far from being the more unified party, they are now bitterly divided over the war in Gaza. Bernie Sanders has said the eruption of pro-Palestinian protests could be Biden's Vietnam, and even invoked the specter of Lyndon Johnson choosing not to run for re-election in 1968 because of the opposition to that war. The analogy is far-fetched. America then was itself sending hundreds of thousands of troops to Vietnam, with more being recruited from college campuses every week. But there's no denying that the party seems more openly divided than it has been in decades. Only 33% of Americans said they approved of Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, which is now opposed both by people who think he is too soft and people who think he is too hard on Israel. Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away.
We told you. We told you guys this idea that they're going to have this Republican primary and someone's going to overthrow Trump was the most copium strategy you can possibly think of. And now you guys see how Fareed is like, oh, the Republicans are united behind their candidate. Yeah, no shit. Like, how desperate do you guys have to be to think that that wasn't going to happen? Let's continue.
And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
Now, that part right there, shocking, because everyone knows it, and it's very shocking to see someone on CNN actually admit that the only reason why this shit is happening because Trump is Biden's main political rival. Now, guys, the reason why I think this is significant is because I cover foreign affairs. If you don't cover foreign affairs, you don't understand why this is significant. People like Cornel West, like, why are you bringing this up? The reason why we bring this up is because you understand what Democrats are doing to Trump is exactly the same thing they use to justify sanctions and regime change operations in other countries. They tried to overthrow Nicolas Maduro and put sanctions on Venezuela because Nicolas Maduro punished people in the opposition party who teamed up with the CIA to try to kill the president. They tried to launch an assassination attempt. They tried to kill him. And then Nicolas Maduro and the government did what any government would do, go after those people who try to assassinate the president. And then people like Bernie Sanders and liberals in the West said that Nicolas Maduro is a tyrant for going after their political opponents. So as they said Nicolas Maduro was a tyrant, they are now going after Donald Trump. And the reason why this is very important is because no matter how you feel about Trump, it's a giant hypocrisy. It's a giant hypocrisy. The same thing they accuse Maduro of doing, way less. They try to kill Maduro. And they got Trump on some crimes that everyone in the ruling class does. I don't think Trump is innocent. I assume all of them are guilty. Hey, what's poppin', sir? I'm going to introduce you here very soon. They are guilty of all these crimes. If they always say Russia, they accuse Putin of killing Alexei Navalny with some sort of blood clot gun, apparently. And Putin is the worst person ever because he go after his political opponents, as Biden is literally going after his political opponents. So I think we almost done. I think that part right there is very significant. And liberals been in shambles hearing this because the only people who don't think this is political are people who are part of the Democratic Party who are not allowed to say that. So we almost done. We're going to wrap up and get to our next segment here soon.
This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump. A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden. Things could change. Polls do suggest that were Trump to be convicted of a felony, it could shift votes in Biden's favor. The administration may be able to pull off a ceasefire in Gaza and then a broader political settlement that gives Palestinians political rights and Israel diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Trump could always embroil himself in some kind of scandal. But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative on asylum policy, for example, and reverse these numbers. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020, but Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift could be a reflection of people's sense that the president's age is affecting his capacity to govern. And there's very little that Joe Biden can do now to change that perception.
Or maybe he funded a genocide. Or maybe he's guilty of all the things I was explaining you earlier, the biggest eco-terrorist in human history, the Nord Stream pipeline bomber, funded Nazis in Ukraine, busted railroad strikes. All of these are the reasons why Biden are screwed. Now, it's almost like the corporate media, it's trying their best to look at it. I saw this headline, I thought it was funny as hell. A war game simulated a second Trump presidency. It concluded NATO would collapse. The greatest Trump ad I've ever seen in my life. And they wonder why Biden is getting destroyed. So I'm going to ask you about that here very soon. I see you laughing too. But that's hilarious.